Okay, nice. Thank you everyone for coming here today to this panel, Scalability and Interoperability in the Age of AI. Ethereum just turned 10 years this year, and it's amazing how we have been talking, or at least I have the impression that we have been talking for scalability and interoperability since forever. And it's amazing because it's still a relevant topic. A lot of things have been implemented, deployed, and delivered, and it's still something that we are seeing, and we have the opportunity to keep talking today. And right now we are living in a multi-chain scenario where we have a lot of different layer ones, a lot of different layer twos that are working together. And to try to get all these moving parts, we have seen how the AI has become a hot topic right now. And the main question for this panel will be how the AI is going to be able to help this scalability and all the problems that we are and the challenges that we are facing. And before diving in this topic, I would like to give some quick time for an introduction of this amazing star lineup of panelists. Wes, do you want to start?
Yes, Wes Crook, CEO of FP Block. We've been building in the blockchain space now since 2017. Just a little background history. We're the original auditors of Cardano. We have been the auditor of the Swirl's public blockchain for Hedera for the past 7 years. We have about 110 projects under our belt, and we just launched our Colme framework in August to help bring interoperability to Web3 space.
Hello, everybody. My name is Alex. In blockchain for 10 years already, building infrastructure. The most notable things about myself is that I've launched Rainbow Bridge, the first decentralized bridge in between Ethereum and other network. The latest things that I'm working on is AURORA. This is the EVM compatible solution on top of Near, as well as Near Intent, probably one of the biggest cross-chain trading platform at the moment.
Hi, I'm Marty. I guess we're working on blockchain as well for too long. For Rakuten has a big interest in blockchain, particularly in Japan, where they're based. We run a crypto exchange in Japan. We did sort of play around with an NFT marketplace for a while, but collectibles kind of ran their time really without utility. We then worked on, we're doing a Web3 wallet, so an MCP-based consumer wallet. Really now trying to focus on opening up partnerships on Web3 and dApps to Rakuten customers. Okay.
Hi everyone, I'm Norbert from ZK Cloud Zenith. In the past 2-3 years, we've been building ZK proving infrastructure with ZK Cloud, and in the past couple of months, we've been focusing on adding an execution layer on top. That's what we call Zenith, allowing enterprises to spin up natively verifiable multi-VM blockchain environments in a very customizable and modular way. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Amazing. We have so nice speakers with different backgrounds. And for all of you to try to give some context, maybe some of you are not so technical and could have the same feeling that I was mentioning at the beginning, that these tech guys, these persons are always talking about the same topics. They are always talking about the scalability and how they are going to get the fully cross-chain compatibility and all of this stuff. So to give some context for the people who is here, why do you think that we are still 10 years after Ethereum came, why is it still so relevant? Why do you think that we are still talking about these topics, and what are the next things that we could start building?
I think from our opinion, our perspective, there's just too much fragmentation. The industry, in our opinion, is upside down. We have ecosystems that are funding application builders that are then bribing the users to come to the space. And the reality of it is we have no users in Web3. Very, very small class of people are using the applications. They're all built to drive tokenomics. They're all built from a ecosystem perspective. So the whole idea of interoperability is becoming prevalent because that's where the capital markets are driving us, because they're tired of seeing our industry not look at the user experience and building applications that users actually want to use. And then the enterprises don't want to come into this space because why do I want to build an application that I'll have to support on 3 or 4 different chains? That's just not feasible for an enterprise, with even though they have large IT budgets, they have limited R&D money to go build on. So what we see is until we as an industry have a common set of rails, a common set of standards, and a common infrastructure, we're not going to solve the interoperability problem. To us, interoperability will come once we have a common platform.
Do you agree, Alex?
In general, yes. So the thesis that crypto doesn't have users, I tend to agree with this, because the majority of people who are in crypto are not users, they are investors, and that's a different type of a person. In terms of the interoperability standards and the way how we are able to make the user experience much better than we have at the moment, I do believe this is just like the age problem. Crypto for me has always been reminiscent of the previous big technology that I was working in, which is the general purpose computation on GPUs, which now is known as like power in AI. And now there is a very specific and straightforward point of application. But when I was starting to go in there, like we needed to do very low level things, and in case you are going to change the nested loops, then you're going to have, instead of the acceleration of your compute, you're going to have a deceleration 10 times. So yeah, I think the technology is a little bit too early, and because of the like very big focus on figuring out the base layer of the technology, we are forcing users to think about things like stuck transactions, nonces, gas payments. All of these things is not something that is happening with your Apple Pay, right? And I'm pretty sure that we are going to resolve this. And there are lots of very promising developments in the interoperability space, specifically with the focus on AI.
Marty?
I was probably a slightly different view in this. When we first started out, we built our first app on top of UTXO. And it was our background. We came from Bitcoin, and so we kind of stuck with what we knew. But we came to the realization we were building a custom scheme that really was never going to be integrated to by anyone else but ourselves. And looking at what Ethereum were doing, for us really, the fact that there was published interfaces, that ERCs and ERPs were there, that we could build our own sort of collateral against these interfaces and consume other people's tokens on the same interface really made a lot of sense for us for interoperability, because now really we don't have to provide so much of the integration. That's just chain level integration. For us, if you give me an API and an RPC endpoint, I can probably talk to what's behind that. So that for us really made a lot of sense, and really for Ethereum has grown the ecosystem just by having interfaces that people comply with. So I think that's been really valuable. I think that the problem we're starting to see is, yes, there's fragmentation or there's diversity. There's now a lot of chains and a lot of tokens, and certainly from an enterprise perspective, scaling to support all of that is difficult. We kind of went from certainly the early days of running infrastructure, to now almost looking for a provider. So we try not to run infrastructure just for RPC connectivity because there's too much of it. But certainly those interfaces make it easier for us to connect different tokens on different chains pretty easily, to be honest. I mean, there is friction. I don't know if we're getting into after, but from an interoperability, that has really helped how we build our stacks, and even the sideways integration, things like Wallet Connect, how we integrate with dApps. Having those interfaces means we're not building a custom integration to anything. We try not to. So I'll just stop there.
Norbert?
Yeah, so from my side, I agree with what the others have said. I do think that UX has to improve a whole lot because like blockchain itself should actually be unnoticeable for the end users, and it should actually be like kind of limitless or like have unbounded performance. And with ZK Cloud, we started focusing on ZK proving infrastructure because we do believe that zero knowledge as a technology can actually help both in interoperability and scalability, which could make the UX more smooth and seamless, and like blockchains becoming more unnoticeable behind the front ends, and also more performant. And what I mean is just, I don't know how familiar you guys are with ZK technology, but on a high level, with zero-knowledge proofs, you can prove the correctness of any data, any computation, any statement without revealing the underlying data per se, if you need to hide that. And what it means is you take a ZK VM, like it's a VM executing your code, your program logic, but it doesn't just execute it, it also creates a proof that it has been executed correctly. And with this, when we talk about interoperability, the performance of these ZK VMs have been going through a tremendous improvement, and we are seeing real-time transaction proving happening even now. And with that, you can actually, prove the execution of an event on one chain to another chain where it can trigger another event. You can prove that finality has been reached here, and you can reach finality there too. The mechanisms around that need to be figured out, I think, because the solutions that we have now, partially already using ZK, are good for the current rate of adoption, but for like billions of people using blockchains, I guess there is still quite a bit of improvement needed. On the other hand, for the scalability aspect, with ZK, you can move away from the traditional functioning of blockchains, as in like re-executing the same block to verify that the block proposer has done everything correctly. You can just do proof verification, and off of that, attest to the block. And like proof verification has very minimal requirements. Even your smart fridge actually is soon being able to verify a proof. And then the other thing is, with ZK, you can do a lot more computation off-chain, increasing, like you don't have the limits of the EVM, for example, when we talk about computation capacity, but you send back the proof or verify the proof back on chain, and with that, you actually can scale the size of the computation that's possible through blockchains as well. So I think ZK is going to be core in both.
Okay, and talking and centering the conversation around interoperability, you have mentioned things related like UX, which is a key point. In my opinion, it's one of the key points that will make things easier for the final users. Do you think that right now the challenges that we are facing to achieve a common, or to try to achieve this utopical world where we have true cross-chain compatibility that is seamless for the end user, do you think that the current challenges that we have right now are more of a technical thing, that we have technical things that we still need to solve? Or do you think that is a coordination or an off-chain thing that is not related with the limitations of the current technology?
If I understood the question correctly, I think the user experience, the user community doesn't care about all this. All they want to know is, when I hit the button on my phone, does my application work? And, the fragmentation within the Web3 space with all the different chains, and we're talking about interoperability, I believe personally, and I'll say it, 85% of the names that we talk about today won't exist in 5 years. They'll be like AOL, they'll be like, AOL, for example. I think what we're going to see with the technologies, because there's a lot of great technologies, we don't have a winner yet. We don't have a clear who's going to provide that infrastructure standard. We're going to have a Netscape moment. We're going to have a DOS moment somewhere in our technology cycle that will set that standard for us. If you're familiar with the internet, up until Netscape, it was all about scripting, and it was very difficult to get to it. Then www came to life, and here we go. We'll have that here in this space, because users, again, don't care about the infrastructure other than they want to know that when they hit the button, it works, their money is secure, their transaction happens, and it's not difficult to do. And in Web3, we have a lot of challenges with wallets and wallet connects and interoperability challenges that we all talk about, but we're not really solving those problems other than from the perspective of each chain. Each chain saying, hey, I have an interoperability solution, but it's not going across everybody. It's not a common standard. Everybody's doing it a little bit differently. So it makes it very hard for enterprise. It makes it very hard for people building applications for users, not investors, to really figure out how to go build and build it correctly so users want to use the applications and want to drive the revenues into Web3 that we have today. So, that's one of the reasons we did Colme, was to help. We're not saying that's the end all. That's our vision of how we can get infrastructure commonality and drive some of the technical challenges and some of the roadblocks with gas fees and congestion and things of that nature out of it for the builders, so they can just build applications wherever they're coming from, Web 2 or Web 3 native, and move forward. So from a user perspective, all the conversations around interoperability, all the technologies, they don't care. They just want it to work. And it's our job as an industry to figure that out. And I don't think we're there yet. I think there's too much infighting, too much fragmentation. And then over the next couple of years, you're going to start seeing the real players come out. Don't know who those are yet, but somebody will come out.
Okay, Alex, do you think that we went over that barrier and we don't have these technical challenges, as it's more of a coordination problem?
So I think that obviously different ecosystems have their own standards and their own approaches. And the thing that reinforces their focus on these approaches is the underlying tokens and the value of this token. So there is this concept of these thick protocols that accrue in value through the token. And because of this, they are trying to enforce their standards everywhere. And however, this is just is going to be resolved on a higher level, right? So, for example, with near intents, at the moment, every day, more than $50 million are traveling cross chains, and at extremely low rates and very, very quick. So the system is built in a way that people do not need to think about how to fund transactions on Cardano versus Solana versus Tron versus Dogecoin or Zcash. So all of this is just working for them. It's very straightforward and simple. And you can build systems that are going to abstract away things from the users, and that's a pretty. It just takes time. However, also another question here is that what is the world is going to be in a couple of years from now, or in 3 years from now? Do we need actually to build systems for humans to enable a good user experience for them? Is it okay to have, semi-done systems that are going to be operated by user AI agents, which are going to find the most efficient way how to transfer value, even without a good user interface? And there can be different points of view on this, but clearly what we see from the development in the AI vertical over the last years is that AI becomes more and more powerful, and more companies around the world are experimenting around the agentic economy, which is going to fully abstract away all of these complexities of the low-level technologies. So I think that we are at the tipping point where everyone needs to honestly question themselves whom they are building their products for, whether it is humans or it is going to be AI. And depending on the answer to this question, the design principles for the products are going to be very, very different.
Marty?
Okay, that's an interesting segue, because we were thinking about the same thing. And I know, Alex, we were chatting last week, and the point you made to me that I thought is quite interesting is that a really rubbish user experience for a human probably doesn't carry an AI, which is quite good. For us on the UX side, I think there's starting to see enough of standards, of capabilities on the chains to let us abstract away some of the friction. So, native tokens is usually one of the pain points, because, people generally want to use some sort of token, whether it's for a game or for whatever, for utility, for marketing. We've been experimenting with sort of different tokens. but it's the token that has the value. It's the token that people are interested in. The fact that we also have to deal with native tokens on chains is friction, and if the user has to deal with that, that's more friction. So, like, but now with gas abstraction and account abstraction, we can start taking some of that pain away and get a much better UX. Because I think everyone's right. Until Web 3 gets as convenient and as usable as Web 2, never really going to get adoption. And so we get to take these friction points away. Interestingly, on the AI side of things, where we've started experimenting with agentic payments, taking AP2 and X402, and just they're a framework that kind of lets you reason about how that payment flow could work from an AI agent down to a chain. They're, again, when you peel back some of the layers behind that, it's rooted in 2 more ERCs that help you sponsor transactions, particularly on stable coins. The friction now that we're kind of trying to work our way around now is, generally to date we've had, token A on chain A, token B on chain B. Now we're dealing with, a USDC coin that's on God's amount of chains. No, it's everywhere. So how do we handle that now? Do we restrict ourselves and say we're only going to accept stay on base, but yet market cap for USDC, I think the second biggest is Solana. So we're going to say, well, we're not interested in customers who use Solana. Or now we're back to how are we going to bridge? How are we going to have an experience that just says, I just want USDC. I generally don't care what chain it's on. As a payment rail, I want to accept it. As a consumer, I have it. So therefore, we kind of need to work through the integrations to make that work in a seamless way. I don't know, again, I know Near does it sort of at a protocol level, and then there's obviously the ERCs around intents, sort of cross-chain level. So these things are here. I just not there yet with now what's the best way to jump, because we have multiple ways to get around that. And for app developers in enterprise, it's quite a big cognitive load to get over around scaling that across multiple chains. But that's the challenge.
Yeah, Norbert?
Yeah, I do agree with you guys have said. I would mention maybe one quick thing from my side as someone dealing more with zero knowledge, how it can be used in blockchain and outside blockchain as well. I think one key technical blocker has mostly been solved. It's the performance of general purpose ZK VMs, and that's really unlocking a lot of things that have not been possible even a year ago. But I want to mention one thing which is kind of technical but also conceptual, a little bit related to maybe a future standard. And then last week when we chatted, Alex mentioned asynchronous models, like current interoperability solutions. Like, I do agree with all the agentic economy coming up, but they will rely on existing or like the infrastructure that is underneath. So most of the interop solutions are currently built, or a lot of them, with synchronous assumptions, and like that is a blocker for scaling. And I think I don't want to go too deep, and I think Alex has a much deeper view on this, but just the fact that you could start moving to a standard where you don't need sequential execution and one event waiting for the other events to be finalized and then taking a lot of time to actually execute the entire process flow. You could actually have asynchronous composability. You could have the different events proven and then basically eventually get finality for all of them. I think it's kind of like a rabbit hole. I don't want to open that. Maybe Alex has some view to add on that, but I think this is still something that would be good to explore and maybe to become a standard in the future. I don't know.
Yeah, you have opened the Pandora's box. I think it's a super interesting topic to talk about, or to start thinking in what in the future we could face around asynchronous operations in EVM or virtual machine but yeah, it could be a rabbit hole. So you have mentioned, Alex brought two really interesting topics. The first one, he started talking about intents and also about AI. So there's some people right now that we have seen that everybody's talking about AI. Everybody knows what it is. Everybody can have a barely understanding of it. So, but there's also some people that thinks that we have super hype technology, or that we may that it could be a phase that after the few or in the coming years we are trying to get some. Or some people could have the feeling that we are trying to put AI in everything. And yesterday I was listening one of these panels, and there was a panelist who mentioned that AI will be the killer application for blockchain. Do you think that, I think you kind of agree that AI has a place in blockchain, but do you think that we have a lot of hype, or do you really think that AI is going to help improve these interoperability and scalability issues that we are facing? And also super interesting that we may not have this user experience in mind, and we will be open the door to this agentic experience.
Well, I think AI is here to stay. We are doing a lot of work in AI. We've actually built our first application strictly using AI, and it's been out in the market, performing very well for sports analytics. And we have incorporated AI into our business operations. So we do our proposals, we do our test suites, we do our documentation leveraging AI. But the one thing that we have experimented with, and we see, and this goes back to the agents that you're talking about, we need to make sure AI has integrity. Because if you look at a lot of the tools that are coming out right now, they work great the first month. And as you kind of go through, that's why you're seeing so many versions come out, is they're having to clean up their language models. So what's happening is, like, we were working with ChatGPT-5 the other day with something, and it just went awful. So there's a integrity issue with the language models, and making sure when you build it that you're not ingesting garbage that will degrade the use of the model. So there's a lot of work that still has to happen in AI. It is a huge bubble right now. I think somebody yesterday was talking about how 26 is going to be the year of the AI bubble blow up. But it is here to stay. It has its advantages. We will use it from a developer standpoint to iterate faster. It's going to cause people are worried about losing their jobs with AI. They're not. We're going to need more engineers that have to have the knowledge on how to manage the AI outputs. But what it's going to create is a gap. We're going to lose the ability of junior engineers, people coming out of school, wanting to be in this space. You're seeing it in the US now when you hear Zuckerberg spending $100 million hiring engineers for AI building. There's going to be a level of these senior engineers making huge amounts of money, and over time we're not going to have this hierarchy that we've had for years and years and years, where you come out of school, you start off, you're writing scripts, you're doing testing, you're doing all the things and learning how to be a good engineer in writing software. We're going to have a talent gap there, and there's going to be a huge gap here that we got to figure out how to fill. And AI is causing that. So we got to figure out how do we train the next generation of engineers in how to use AI. We're losing critical thinking skills as a society. I see it every day. So things that I had, engineers do before at a junior level, we're just letting the AI agents do it for us. So, what do I do with this guy? I can't pay this guy, $75,000 a year to sit around and look at the walls. And I can't wait for him to learn the skill sets to manage an AI output. So we really that's a big problem to me with the AI, and the integrity issue. So we got to solve those problems, or we're just going to, just kind of have this very select group of people controlling what's going on out there. So it's an interesting dynamic for us today.
So from my point, the interoperation between AI and blockchain is almost inevitable. Autonomous AI agents need to transact value. This is a core thing that everybody do, all of the businesses, all of the humans. If I want to get something, I usually need to pay for it. So AI agents would need to be able to transfer value. And we have two options right now for them, either to apply for ordinary and use the ordinary financial rails for the value transfer, or use the blockchain. Financial rails, the usage of it was for hundreds of years perfected to focus on humans and everything around humans. You cannot open a bank account without a passport, right? That's a very straightforward thing. And AI agents, they don't have passports. So in order for AI agents to be usefully using financial system, there needs to be tons of changes in the regulation, and governments are not the quickest moving entities. So where is my bet on what is going to be the natural value transfer for AI economy? Is it going to be the old, very stable, but also slow-moving traditional financial rails? Or it is going to be the magic internet money? In order to use them, you need only to have a private key that any AI agent already has, right? So my bet is clearly on the second half. And I do believe that many AI companies are actually understanding this. And that's the reason why Sam Altman is partnering with Stripe. That's the reason why Stripe is building their own blockchain. That's the reason why Circle, Tether are building their own blockchains. Everybody understands it. Blockchain is the enabler of the value transfer use case for the future AI economy. And like from my point of view, blockchain vertical should not hack it up. And we need to keep up with all of the increase in demand from the AI, because they require scalability, they require interoperability in between the blockchains, and we need to meet this demand. This is one of the best opportunities for the blockchain to get a proper product market fit, besides only gambling on the tokens, right? So I encourage everybody to build towards this goal.
Marty?
One non-blockchain related part of that for Wesley. I mean, I read a really good quote that AI makes a good engineering team better and a bad engineering team worse, because we get lazy, relying on it. For us, the AI use case, we're starting simple because we're experimenting with the agentic payments, and really how we could create MCP services that we could monetize through microtransactions, using stablecoins. That's low risk, low value, but for us a way to learn how that technology all hangs together. And for us, it takes out some of the non-deterministic piece of it. For us, the AI still nervousness about its non-deterministic properties, it just can go slightly rogue on you every now and again. So, and again, is that a laziness thing? Are we going to let AI patch the things that we find too hard to engineer properly? Don't know. I mean, that's just a thought in my head at the minute. But I am conscious that we see AI as, it's the new hammer and everything turns into a nail and we apply it to everything. Sometimes, some of it is just good engineering. The other thing I was going to say on all of this was, funny, on AP2, again, is sort of that AI intersect with blockchain. I got asked this about 3 years ago, and I honestly said, I just don't know. I really couldn't figure out what the intersect looks like. And now I'm a bit more clear around data, verification, authentication, and payments. And on AP2, they see the AP2 layer as the authentication, the trust layer for payments. And interestingly, they're using verifiable credentials to implement it. So there's another intersect with blockchain where we can use VCs to control and verify what an agent does, that it's doing what was intended by the user. So that's where I am with it all.
Just maybe a last thought on the comment. I think the biggest impact of AI merged with blockchains through the agentic economy will be for the users. And I think this is also a type of like scaling and maybe improving interoperability or more making blockchains to become unnoticeable and seamless. But just the fact that on existing infrastructure, agents can find the most efficient routing paths for user intent and make user transactions faster, more scalable, more efficient, make it cheaper, that's gonna have a huge impact. So it's not directly impacting the infrastructure behind interoperability and scalability, but rather using it in a way that it boils down to a lot of efficiency gain for the user.
We are running out of time, so I would like to introduce one last topic, and it's related with enterprise adoption. And I would like to ask you quite briefly if you think that we have, in this conference, we have a lot of enterprises, a lot of institutions, and for the last years we have been hearing that the technology is not mature yet, that some companies that will want to go from some Web2 companies that wants to jump into the Web3 world, they could experience some bottleneck. Do you think that we are still in that situation, or we are on a perfect time where some Web2 companies could fit in the Web3 space?
Again, I think it boils down to, enterprises coming into this space, it's about choices, and there's too many choices. We need to provide a common infrastructure that people can build on. An enterprise, you take a large enterprise, financial institutions. I've talked with a lot of folks at Bank of America, JP Morgan, other State Street Bank. They have their own blockchain groups going, but the counterparty risk, the compliance issues, the regulatory issues are keeping them out. And again, from a cost of operations, you can only build an application once and maintain it. You can't keep building and changing as the blockchain landscape shifts. So having one, infrastructure and set of rules that these guys can build to, then we can drive to the regulatory levels and the compliance levels and the counterparty risk levels that will allow these bigger institutions to come in and play and be a part of it. And then when we get that, then we're going to really take off as an industry, because that's where the real money is. We have a lot of people sloshing around and doing investments now, but when you talk to the folks at Fidelity and all the big financial houses out of the U.S. that I talk to, they're just waiting. They're waiting for some kind of epiphany where we have one set of rules that we can go play by, and then then they're going to try to make their own rules, but that's a different story. But that's why you're seeing regulation, slow adoption. The European regulatory environment's gotten really bad. U.S. is, we've seen it with, the acts with Trump, but, the problem in the U.S. is I can go do something in Wyoming, which is a very pro-Bitcoin blockchain state, and I can get sued in Oregon for the same thing. So we still have a lot of regulatory mess to clean up. So enterprises don't want to get married down in that. It's too much money to be spent. So we still have a lot of work to do, getting a common, interoperability, whatever you want to call it, but having a common set of rails, a common set of infrastructure, using agents, whatever. But we have to be able to have one, this is what we do for infrastructure in Web3, and that's how we do it.
Super quick.
So we are out of time, but
Yeah,
super quick.
but-
From my point of view, enterprises started to adopt blockchain and AI, and the best example of this is the person from Rakuten who is sitting just on the left-hand side from me. This is the best example of that this thing is happening.
Really quick. It's hard to scale in enterprise, and that's why Rakuten put, I guess, a small team. It's a small engineering team in Belfast to help them work through this space.
Yeah, so from my side, just very quick, I think the complexity that enterprises are facing is not gonna be like pure, for example, TPS related, but more like how do you manage state consistency across a multi-chain transaction or in a multi-chain environment? How do you manage finality? How do you manage all these types of things? So I think like what we have seen is enterprises want a more centralized solution most of the time, or that's what we've been coming along. A single entity and a single operator in a blockchain can scale much easier than in a decentralized setup. So that's why I think it's going to be more complex challenges in terms of like transaction composition, etc., that these enterprises will face.
Okay, nice. Thank you very much for attending this interesting topic. Please, a big applause to our panelists. And I think I have to say that this is the last panel before going to lunch, and that we will have around 1 hour, and everything will be back at 1:15.
Yeah, I'm your new host now, but thank you guys so much to have a little bit more technical side.